Hey guys, so today I'm going to go over how I model 3D printed ball joints for my flexis, which for me was the hardest type of joint to kind of get the hang of. But once I've kind of wrapped my brain around it and figured out how to make it printable in an easy manner, then it's pretty easy from here. So we're going to start off with our little fake body segment here. We're going to add an extra sphere. We're going to make this body segment lower opacity so we can see what's going on inside. And similar to with those donut linked limbs, there are two different ways that I'll do ball joints. And so I'm going to show you how I do both of those different ways, depending on what type of movement and positioning you want with your flexi. So let's make this ball joint smaller. And let's put him into our body here. Let's say, pretend this is a shoulder. So I'm going to kind of grab the ball joint and kind of put it right up against the edge of my body there. And sometimes I will make my other objects when I'm overlapping them different colors because it makes it easier for me to see when things are overlapping or touching each other where they shouldn't be. So let's put him right there. Let's grab a cylinder because let's pretend this is a wing. We're going to throw him in here. Let's do an angle. Give him an arm. And then I might pull this joint out a little bit more. Angle that up. And toss that guy. Like that. Let's say we have, typically I will pull the edge of my shoulders out a little bit this way, so I have a little bit more of an even bump to pull my shoulders in, so that way I have more of that socket up there, so there's less of it going through that extra body segments. Pull that in there, kind of in the middle of all that. I want to get it closest to the edge as I can while it still is going to hang on to that ball for me pretty good. Okay. And then I'm going to pull this down a little. And this was one of the things that was really tricky for me to figure out doing ball joints from this orientation is, your printer is going up here and it's building up, but you get to the ball here and the ball is floating in midair, right? Because you have a socket in here that you want to move smoothly. So the way you fix that is, let's do that. Let's clone our sphere so we have a clean one. And then let's validate it. And let's go to trim, and I will do the line tool, and then I'm going to trim this ball in line with that little arm that I have going on there. So then as your printer prints this ball, it's going to build up off of that arm joint and up into that ball. It's going to keep going up instead of having all this fuzziness down here that is going to be printing in midair. So what instead we're going to do with this other sphere that we had saved, we're going to blend that. We're going to, same thing that we did with the donuts and everything else, we're going to expand that. All right, let's and just enough to where you see that two little lines there. We don't want a ton of extra space with the ball joint because we don't want the ball to fall out of this opening that we have for it. So we're going to do that, and then also make sure you also have space between the arm joint. There's going to raise that, so we have that, and then those two shapes that you expanded, we're going to hide. We're going to hide it, select it, and select our main body. We're going to Boolean, voxel merge, and we've got all of that cut out of this body here. So then these can move smoothly in here. Let's see, and then I like to go in here and kind of clean up a little bit of this outer edge because you see it's a little wonky. This has to do partially with, you know, kind of a rushed placement on my part of where I built in that shoulder socket. Normally I kind of shroud it a little bit better so it goes a little smoother. And you can try to pull in, you know, more of that arm to where that arm is not going to get in the way. So, but that is one way if I want a shoulder joint that is going to come straight up from the bed into the arm there. Another way that I will do a ball joint is, let's add another sphere, is printing it with internal support straight from the bed. So let's say we're going to trim off the bottom of our body. And then this one is a little more straightforward. So we're going to sink that ball down into where that body would be. You can change the color. You can kind of see more how much of that sphere is going to get cut off. We're going to do that. We're going to add our arm again. Oops. Let's snap that to 90. And we want this arm to kind of go in line with where that ball is. Or you can even do the arm similar to our hinge joints. The ball can be one of your anchors. You can actually raise up your cylinder a little bit more as long as you have another anchor on this side that it can bridge over to. But we're going to start with just making it kind of in line with the ball here. And it's important to note too, when you're making your arms, these cylinders to go with your ball joints, you really want to make sure that you make them thin enough in comparison to your ball joints that even when you cut out this extra negative space, there's not enough then space for that ball to fall out of that open joint that you opened up, that open cavity that you opened up for your arm to move around in. So I select that and select that. We're going to clone those, lower the opacity, and stretch it out so we have a little bit of that extra. We're going to do the same thing with Tora, with the cylinder. Stretch it out so we have a little bit of that overhang. Then select the two cavities that we just expanded. Go to that main body again, Boolean voxel merge. And boom, then you have this joint that can spin freely this way. And this one will be able to spin freely kind of up and down, but you'll have more limitation with the all the way around movement the more you have this arm going inside the body, because that's going to limit your range of motion. So I'm going to show you two examples of these different types as well and kind of how they work and look in practicality. So two examples of this ball joint, different ways that I do it. So this is one that is in place up from an angle on the bed. So it prints, this guy prints lying down like that with his wing down against the bed like that. And this wing builds up and there's that hollowed out socket inside the arm here. And you see he has that whole range of motion because basically only the ball is held inside these little shoulder sockets. And then Madam Feather Dragon here is the type where she pulls up, builds up her ball socket from the bottom. And I did this intentionally because I wanted her wings to be able to flop down all the way, because you see he doesn't have up down motion really. He just has that motion, whereas I really wanted her to have that flop down as well. So that's why I attached her ball joints to the bottom of her body. And the meow here is actually a good example of me kind of fiddling and playing around with these ball joints to get different effects, because I really wanted the structure and the high shoulder placement of the wings on this girl that similar to this style, but I didn't want it to be quite as stiff as his wings. I still wanted some of that. You see she still has a little bit of that up down movement that was really important for this girl. And so, but she also has this rotational movement because it's still the ball joint in there. So basically what I did there is she has extra space in that cavity for this to kind of tilt up and down in that cavity. So that is kind of how I got a little bit of that effect. And you can't get too much of that without, again, pulling that ball out of this cavity on accident. But you can kind of play around with the feel of these joints a little bit to kind of get certain movements that you want. So these are how I do my ball joints, and hopefully this helps.